Jimmy Butler potentially going to the Golden State Warriors. Trevor and I covered that in a video earlier today, but we realized we didn't talk much about the Phoenix Suns piece of it all and how they could potentially be impacted by this potentially happening and where they would stand if it does. So we're going to talk about that here today. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you subscribe because 80% of viewers aren't subscribed to the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you do. Stick around for more content from Trevor and I as we cover the entire league, especially here in the trade season, because there's so much information going around. You're not going to miss it. Again, stick around for it. That being said, if you don't know what we're talking about, here's a brief overview of what happened earlier today. There was a potential 3-team trade framework that could send Jimmy Butler to Golden State, Andrew Wiggins going to Toronto, and Bruce Brown going to Miami. One framework, two sources described as Golden State's hope, involved Andrew Wiggins going out in the deal either directly to Toronto or rerouted to Toronto from Miami for Brown. If Wiggins does not sound like the significant piece Stein reported on to tell you, he's not. But what he is a contract that they can package with other things. So that is interesting. And again, we talked all about that in a separate video, and you'll want to check that one out as well. This is more or less a continuation from that because, well, if that happens, the Phoenix Suns are kind of screwed. Not really, but they kind of are. It's just a weird spot to be in if you're Phoenix. So we're going to talk about that. But first, a word from today's video sponsors, PrizePicks. So when you guys play using the code Bulletin, you can get $50 off as well. So make sure you do that through the link down below in the description. When you guys play, I believe $5. So we're going to go through and pick a few guys. But again, make sure you do it. All right, so first thing I want to say is I feel like we're going to go down here. We're going to look at Kristaps 19. That's a tricky one versus Chicago. I'll say more. I think that he'll get that. I think that's an easy one. Next up, we're going to choose our boy Jokic. Rebounds, assists, more easy. 22.5. That's absolutely happening. It's a pretty easy one. I mean, that's kind of like right on the average, but he's going to do it. All right, so last but not least, we are going to go over to D'Angelo. No, we'll go to Jordan Poole, the all-star himself, having a better season this year for sure, but I'm betting against. We're going to go less. So if you guys wanted to play, you can as well. Entry fee for this would be $20. You'd win $45 if you were to get the right selection. So again, all you have to do, link down in the description, sign up for PrizePicks as well, and use the code Bulletin when you get there. All right, so moving on from that, I wanted to take a look at the Phoenix Suns table here. Actually, let's just backtrack a little bit. So one of the reasons the Suns are in a weird spot is because they made this trade that kind of doesn't make a lot of sense unless there's a follow-up to it. So here's how things look. Per Sharania, the Suns have agreed to trade their 2031 first-round pick to the Jazz in exchange for conditional first-round picks in 25, 27, and 29. So this is a trade that went down like a week ago or whatever. But you have a situation where Phoenix is trading a 2031 first-round pick. Now, mind you, in 2031, let me tell you what their team will look like. Like that's so far, they don't have anybody on the books that far, right? You could argue maybe Booker's here. I doubt Durant. I don't think there's any chance Durant's here. Beal, probably not going to be here. I mean, would Booker be here? I'm not really sure. That's a good bit out. Like, I don't really know. He's also going to be a bit older. I'm not really sure what's happening here. Are you still building around Booker in 31, 6 years from now? I'm not really sure. Just to give you like context, right? Like that's pretty far. So there's a real chance that the Suns are absolutely terrible. I don't know if they do have draft picks in between years, stuff like that they weren't able to trade. Like, here's a look at some of the stuff they have. We'll talk about this in a moment. But there's a real chance Phoenix is absolutely brutal in 2031. So with that being said, trading that pick for picks that are projected to be pretty good, 25, 27, 29, these are picks, I believe, that they are from other teams like Cleveland, etc. That's a really tricky move to make because what happens with this is you can open up the other assets, right? You can, and we'll see when we look at the draft picks, you have the ability to trade the 26 if you want it, 28 if you want it. Like, it loosens the Stepien rule. By the way, Trevor did a video, and I'll leave it linked as the end screen on this. If you don't know who Ted Stepien is, why they have that rule, you should really check it out. It's kind of crazy. But basically, it's there to stop you from trading all your first round picks in every year. So while this stuff often gets reported like these teams have nothing, oh my God, it's just more or less they've got stuff. It's just not tradable. They're forced to use it, basically. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the picks that this team has here. 25 more favorable of Phoenix and Houston to Houston than other to Brooklyn if Houston is 1 through 10, or if Houston's 11 through 30, less favorable than LAC. It's just a whole lot of spin and protections and all this stuff on these picks, but they have picks is the point, right? That's all you needed. They don't have to be your own picks. You just got to have picks on the books. They got 26 pick, least favorable of Phoenix and Orlando, Washington 1 through 8, and Memphis, so on and so forth. There's a lot of verbiage here, but they've got picks. So that's kind of what they're doing here. They got some picks that they're sending out to Washington in 25, 26, 27, probably doing some swapping stuff there. I'm not going to really break it down, but they've got stuff here for basically every year, whether it's they're giving out, they have picks that they gained through the trade recently. So they've got options. And then here's the 2031 that they just traded out going to Utah. So they've got options, and that's because they traded, again, to get these extra picks. So if you're Utah, that's a bad trade. If you're Utah, turning 3 picks into 1, or excuse me, if you're Phoenix, it's a bad trade if you don't turn it into something else. If you're Utah, that's a great pick. That's a great trade because those picks weren't going to be much. They're probably not going to be much. But if you're getting the 31 pick, like I explained from Phoenix, that's a great one. So why would Phoenix be screwed, though? What's the point? So with that, where we circle back to the framework here, this isn't a guaranteed deal. This doesn't mean it's going to get done today. This doesn't mean this is a thing that is absolutely happening. Phoenix still has a chance to get Jimmy Butler, and I think that by trading that pick that I said is very uncertain in 31, what it'll be for those picks that are probably not going to be all that good, probably going to be very late lottery picks, not a lot of value there in upcoming years, including I think this year, right? What they did was they opened up the step in, so they're able to trade the picks in the middle, and maybe they'll trade one of those other picks as well. I don't know, but they had that deal lined up so that you can follow it up. Because if you just made that trade just for the sake of doing a trade, then what's the point? What's the value? There is no value. You need to go out and make another trade to follow it up. And up till now, that had been probably Jimmy Butler. Now, we've reported a lot here about the issues with that because it turns into, oh, does Bradley Beal want to go there? Oh, does this team want Bradley Beal with his no trade clause in the first place? Like, there's a whole lot of problems with that. And Miami probably doesn't want Bradley Beal. I think they've said so as much already, but you'd have to get a third team involved. That's why there's been rumors about a 3, 4, 5 team trade. It's just so convoluted. And then there's talk about Miami potentially trying to get Zach LaVine, but then it's like, okay, well, does LaVine want to go to Chicago? I'm sure you could pay Chicago enough draft picks to maybe take him on for a couple years, whatever. But does he want to go there? He has ultimate decision on that. So it's just such a crazy situation to be in that you would have to think that they made this trade with the idea that they knew something was going to be able to get done. So they probably could have been pretty close to something. But when you start mixing in 3, 4, 5 teams, if somebody says, oh, actually, I want this instead, the entire deal falls apart. So it gets really tricky when you start putting all these teams together because they've got to take these frameworks and go back to ownership and be like, okay, let's do this. And if ownership's like, wait a minute, why aren't we getting this? Then they got to go back to the deal and be like, okay, let's renegotiate this part of it. And then it just takes forever. And a lot of them fall apart. It's really tricky to get done. So if you're Phoenix and you don't get Jimmy Butler, I think that trade was an absolute failure. But what are your other options? You don't have many options, right? Another intriguing one recently popped up, and that would be Bradley Beal. If they could maybe find a way to put him in a deal. I don't know the cap situation. I'm not going to pull up the trade machine, but theoretically, something like De'Aaron Fox could be a star level player they could try to target. I think he would actually. It's a little bit redundant with Beal, but not really, because you still need a point guard. Regardless, he's more of a point guard than Beal is. So I think that would be an upgrade for Phoenix. I think they'd get better. I think player for player, he's much better than Beal is anyway. So I think that would be nice, but he doesn't want to go there. He wants to go to the team out there in San Antonio. So he doesn't want to go here. So that's not something you're going to do. What else are you going to do? You're going to go for BI? Can you even do that? That's just such a big salary discrepancy there. It's like 15 million. Can you actually do that? I'm not really sure, but would that be a trade that you're going to make if you're Phoenix? Does Beal want to go? Does Beal want to go to New Orleans? Again, that matters. Like typically it wouldn't matter unless the team was trying to keep the player involved. And in this case, Beal, they don't really have to ask him anything outside of the fact he's got that. If he didn't have that, they'd probably ship him wherever they wanted. It is what it is. Because he's not your Kevin Durant's or LeBron's or whoever, where you're going to have them involved and send them where they want to go, right? So that's a tricky situation they're in. They invested so much on this roster, and there's not other real options out there. The only thing I can really imagine happening is they break that quarter that's Bradley Beal into, you know, couple dimes and a nickel if they can do something like that and get depth pieces that fit on this roster. Not another star level guy, but like depth pieces. Maybe you could do that with a team out there. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but that's up to Phoenix, who's proven to be pretty creative. That's up to them to figure out what they're going to do at that point. But if it's Bradley Beal or bust, and they made that decision on that draft picks and stuff like that with Bradley Beal's and Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Butler or bust. But if they made that deal with Jimmy Butler in mind and Jimmy Butler goes elsewhere, that could be a pretty bad failure. Anyway, if you want to know more about that, click the video on the screen right now where Trevor and I break down the entirety of that deal that I showed you earlier in detail.